Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are joining us from. Welcome to NPower's panel discussion in honor of Military Appreciation Month, Post-Traumatic Strength, a Force Multiplier. I'm Kelly Antonucci, Senior Director of Strategy and Engagement, and very excited to have you here today to join us for this panel. We have a really amazing group of panelists, from currently serving military members to retired service members, to talk about the impact of military service and what it brings to the workplace. I am very pleased to introduce to you Michael Tillman, who will serve as our moderator. Michael served 8 years in the United States Marine Corps as a presidential aviation security specialist, and spent 2 years as a member of the United States Secret Service Foreign Mission Branch, serving Presidents Clinton and President George H.W. Bush. Mike is currently the Department Manager of Information Warfare and Cyber Non-Kinetic Operations in the Cyber Information Solutions Business Unit of Northrop Grumman. Michael has 20 years of experience with Northrop Grumman in the area of cyber operations. Our panelists today are Heather Haag, who was commissioned into the Army Reserve in 2014 out of the Virginia Military Institute as a Medical Service Corps officer, and is currently serving in the Army Reserves as a Civil Affairs Officer and Team Chief in Bravo Company 445, Civil Affairs Brigade out of Mountain View, California. And Heather is currently the Placement Director in NPower's California region. We also have Christopher Starling, retired from the U.S. Marine Corps as a colonel with 26 years of service as an infantry officer, completing 10 overseas deployments, including 3 combat tours. His post-retirement work has been focused on the veteran community, and Chris is currently the Executive Director of NPower California and also leads NPower's new Skill Bridge program. Sergey Zabarin is a retired Marine who served with the 2nd Battalion, 25th Marine Regiment as an infantry assault Marine and TOW gunner. He was awarded a certificate of commendation for training and advising the Iraqi border security forces. Sergey is also an alumni of NPower's Spring 2021 Tech Fundamentals program, and he was so inspired by the impact of our program, he decided to join NPower as the recruitment and admissions manager in New York. Demetrius Goodwin served as a non-commissioned officer in the U.S. Army Signal Corps, where he served 4 years supervising a team of data, voice, and satellite communication specialists. Demetrius is currently NPower's Executive Director in the Maryland region. So welcome to all of our panelists, and Michael Tillman, our moderator. Thank you again for joining us and for all of our participants today. So with that, Mike, I will turn it over to you.
Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Everybody's supposed to say 5 by 5, right? I copy 5 by, right? Nobody? Okay. I heard a lot of infantry assault, but not a lot of comms people obviously on here. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. As accused, I'm Mike Tillman. Thank you, Kelly, for the wonderful introduction, and good afternoon to everyone here. I am honored to sit here and possibly moderate this panel, because as the moderator, I get to just throw out the darts and not have to actually answer the questions. But I'm really thankful to be here, thankful for my time as a veteran. Even though you're no longer in the uniform, your activity and your endeavors of service don't ever stop, not till the heart drops, right? As mentioned, I work for Northrop Grumman, and I work in the area of cyber, so I am fortunate to be a part of the mission still, supporting military customers and our IC community customers with real world cyber activities and mission support functions that make me still feel a part of what I love so much of being a service member, as a part of the mission, supporting troops downrange and hoping that our activities can be of some support to their mission success. Really excited about this conversation about becoming a force enabler, and really excited to get this going. Are there any additional admin things that we need to do, Kelly, before we kick off?
Thanks, Mike. No, we're pretty much set. Just if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the Q&A section, and we will have about 10 minutes at the end of the discussion to go ahead and cover those questions.
Awesome, thank you. So for the theme of this particular panel, our theme is post-traumatic strength. I think we all as veterans and specifically as Americans have I don't want to say had enough as if it's too much, but we all hear a lot about post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder and the toll that it takes on our service members that are trying to reassimilate themselves back into quote unquote the real world. But I don't think this particular topic that we're going to cover here actually gets talked about enough. There is strength that can be drawn from sometimes traumatic issues, and I think we as veterans know that firsthand. As a Marine, the term is community suffering. Right, we all learn to suffer through things together as a bonding mechanism and as a way of realizing that we are ultimately here to support the team. So I'm going to kick off this first question and allow everybody a couple minutes, maybe 30 to 45 seconds to answer. And it is, what exactly does post-traumatic strength mean to you? Since we do have a lady in our midst, Ms. Haag, I will allow you to go first.
Mike, thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. To me, post-traumatic strength it's in the title. It doesn't ignore that there was something challenging that happened, whether that was in the military, in your personal life, because we all still have personal lives while in the military, or with your civilian friends, and it can apply to everyone. But the key word is post and strength as well. So it's acknowledging the feelings that you're having, the condition that you're in, whatever it may be when you've gone through the trauma that you've faced through the challenge, but it's the fact that you got through the post. There's something happening after, and it's no longer defining you wholly as a person, but it's something that's been built into your foundation that builds you into a whole person, a strong person still, and it's not in control of your life. So it becomes a strength that you have. You've built a community you can lean on, and you come through the other side. So post-traumatic strength to me is you acknowledge you had something hard happen, you work through those feelings, and you gain tools to work through them, and you keep those tools forever, and they make you stronger. And I think the veteran community has a lot of that, a lot of tools that we share with one another, and we share with anybody we come in contact with our new community. So that's what it is to me.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll say, since Demetrius identified that he's injured and legally handicapped, we'll let the handicap go next.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So I guess I'll relate it to, I was just thinking about, we think about muscle fibers or building muscle. And in that case, when you exercise or lift weights, you're testing that muscle, just like we're tested in the military. But the testing, while it does break you down, like a muscle fiber, on the other end, you're built back up stronger. And so when veterans come out, they've been tested, they've been put under stress, but they've also gained strength to better support, like a muscle fiber, the body function. But I think they're better able to support an organization that they're going into post-service time. So that's how I would define post-traumatic strength.
Awesome. Sergey.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to present. Mike, thank you for moderating. It's a pleasure. My views really echo my colleagues' views, Heather and Demetrius. I agree. And when I think of post-traumatic strength, I think of mindset. I believe that challenges can make us or they can break us. And in the military, especially soldiers, Marines, airmen, service members in general, they undergo unique trials that you don't really experience in the civilian workforce. And sometimes trials in life can really break us down. But if we choose to learn from those trials, if we choose to rise up to the demands of those trials, then we grow as a result and gain strength that not only benefits us and allows us to improve our lives, but also the lives of others. And to me, I feel like that's a quality that a lot of service members have because of the unique challenges placed by the occupation and their service. So for me, post-traumatic strength is the mindset of taking on challenges, of rising up to the challenge, despite the difficulties that it may present, and finding a way to grow as a result of it, to be better, to be stronger, to be faster, and to be of benefit to those around you.
These answers just keep getting better and better. Colonel Starling, you got your weight up. We're ready.
I'm gonna unmute myself first. And yeah, I would just add on to what my colleagues have said. They hit it right on the head. But I drilled down into it a little bit further. One, you know, if you're a veteran, especially a combat veteran, you've probably experienced some sort of trauma somewhere. And in many cases, whatever you're experiencing in your workplace, in your regular life, probably won't compare to that. It might. I mean, things happen. But what do you do with that experience that you have, that hardship that you went through with a group of other people? Rarely in the military do you go through something alone. You go through it as a unit, you come out as a unit. So what do you do with that experience? So to me, post-traumatic strength has three parts. One, you know, you've got to figure out a way to have impact, right? How can I take that experience and make a difference with it, right? And do something for good. That's number one. Two, love. You know, that's something that you don't hear very much talked about by assault Marines, right? But this is a really important fact. Is there someone in your life that loves you, that cares about you, right? And that might be your spouse. It could be your parents, your brothers and sisters, your family. It can be your close friends that you have from your neighborhood or that were in your rifle squad. And the third thing is something to look forward to, something that I'm working toward, whether that's writing a book or going to somebody's graduate or something that you're always working toward. So impact, love, and something to look forward to. You're not alone in this. And that to me is what post-traumatic strength is.
Sir, you did not disappoint. All great answers. I think this is a tremendous topic. And I think the more we talk about additional support mechanisms to our veteran community for supporting one another and helping others find this post-traumatic strength, I think the better off we will find ourselves as time goes on. I think everyone is aware that throughout the country, there is a broader conversation about mental health that has been triggered over the last, I probably would say maybe 2 to 4 years, that is making life a little easier for everyone, not just veterans, but specifically for veterans to talk to folks when they're having a hard time, talk to folks when they're dealing with anxiety, talk to folks and seek out assistance when maybe they don't feel like that they're at their best or that they are exactly who they could or want to be. And I think this idea, again, about post-traumatic strength can be a mindset change for a lot of folks who may be struggling in that vein, and giving them the strength to go out and just get help, or to go out and help somebody else, with the realization that we all recognize, or don't always recognize, that we're not all okay. And sometimes we need a little bit more help than we want to ask for. So I'm going to pivot that really quickly and segue into another conversation about the term force multiplier. I think we all know what the term force multiplier means from a tactical standpoint. You execute an activity that took 4 people to do it. And now with this particular attachment, this tool, this software, or this activity, you can now take 4 people and get the work of 8, maybe 10 done, right? That is traditionally what you would call a force multiplier. But how can we, as a veteran community, become our own force multipliers for our fellow veterans that possibly need assistance? That's how I'll spin this question. So go back to you, Colonel Starling. How can or are you executing in the world right now as a force multiplier in your post-active duty career?
Yeah, and you know, the force multiplier can be an organization, it can be an individual that joins an organization, right? I can think of several people on my team right now that are force multipliers in the recruiting effort, in the fundraising effort, right? As we talked just about NPower. But my goal for the people that we train, I want them to be force multipliers with the employers that they join. And really what I want them to do is be super competent at their tech fundamentals or their advanced training skills. And then I want them to have that force of personality that goes along with it, and the initiative and the creativity that goes along with it, right? A lot of times in the military, you know, we get stereotyped as well. We just get told, hey, go do something and follow orders. You know, most of the orders that I was given were ambiguous and open-ended. They sometimes didn't even make sense. And it was up to me to figure out how to do mission analysis, figure it out, and bring order to the chaos, right? So a force multiplier is something that makes whatever it is greater and better than it was before. And a lot of times we talk about equipment being force multipliers, or, you know, in the military, like a tank or a drone or this can do these things. But to me, in the workplace, it's all people, right? There's technology, there's other things, but when I talk about force multipliers, they are people. And at NPower, we're creating force multipliers to go and support our employer partners.
Great answer. I'll slide back, same order. Sergey.
I think this is a great question. I'll start by saying that to me, a force multiplier, it's a pretty simple concept. It's making the team better, right? At its core, it's making those around you better. And it's done so through continuous efforts to make yourself better, to do the job more efficiently, to do it more effectively. Good communication, to understand what those around you need in order to be successful, and then executing on that and working on that. I really love what Chris said about bringing order to chaos. And I feel that a lot of the times being a force multiplier is just that. It's just coordinating and organizing and getting everybody on the same page, working together towards a mission, towards an objective. And as you influence others, they in turn influence others, and that collective builds up to an energy, a momentum that can do really incredible things. With regards to how we as veterans can be force multipliers for the veteran community, I think the biggest thing is, you know, I always come back to it as one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is to lead by example. You know, show up to the employer and really impress them, highlight, know how to communicate the value of your military experience, and do a good job to pave the way forward for the veterans that will follow, to make employers interested in hiring more veterans, and also be able to communicate the strengths, as we're doing now, talking about post-traumatic strength of what veterans bring to the civilian workplace. I think those conversations and having that, being able to showcase the skills that you bring to the table will do a lot for helping veterans get employed and have more opportunities.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Goodwin.
Yes, sir. So again, I'll piggyback and just go right to being able to take your unique experiences and the attributes coming out of the military and just applying those into an organization. Again, it goes directly to being a force multiplier. And then when you're looking at, for me personally, you know, taking my experience as a vet and even seeking out organizations, for instance, NPower, or ways that you can advocate for and or directly benefits vets, goes right to the heart of being that force multiplier for our veterans.
All right, round it out, Ms. Haag.
Absolutely. So I think we talk about a force multiplier like it's very clear, and we understand what a veteran brings to the table. And a lot of that's been mentioned. Veterans excel in providing clarity in chaos, and we operate in a world of chaos right now. Veterans are extremely strong decision makers, especially when it's not clear what the right decision is. They can cut through what's important and what's not and make a good decision. They're good calculated risk takers, and they don't mind taking on the risk. We're used to it. And veterans are often highly effective leaders. We know those traits. And those are what make people force multipliers. I think what the important role we play here, if I remember correctly, your question was, what are we doing as force multipliers in our communities, is helping employers and helping our students right now, our trainees, understand A, that they are force multipliers, that they have these skills that they can transfer over to their new place of employment, and B, most importantly, almost, employers and our communities around us understand that these skills are A, what they're looking for, and B, they are force multipliers, that bringing one person on who can do these things is going to change their teams, change how they innovate, change how they work with their customers, and will take them from point A to point B so much faster than they would if they don't bring on these really strong individuals who don't have skills that really easily go on a resume, but if you get talking with them and hear their stories, hear how they led a team and developed them, how they made decisions, you know that veteran, that person is going to be who you want leading your team. So I think that's one of the biggest roles we play, is helping others understand what a force multiplier is, especially in relation to a veteran, what the skill sets are they're looking for, and how to talk to them to understand it.
You guys are awesome. You'd have thought somebody gave you a script and allowed you to prepare for this. Okay, so I saw there's a question in the live chat in the Q&A section, and I'll read it really quickly because I think it's related to my next question. Uh-oh, somebody took it away from me. Oh, there it is, I got it back. The question was, can a panelist describe a skill set that they struggled with in the armed services, which turned out to be a strength in the civilian sector? So think about that a little bit. I see Sergey's wheels spinning up there, and then I'm going to drop out the actual third question where we're going to go with, because I think it's not too far away. So our third question was, how do you motivate yourself for both professional pursuits and personal goals? So I think we got a little bit of both, right? How do you figure out the things that maybe were difficult for you in the beginning that you maybe eventually mastered, and now these are things that you're using as high level resume bullet points, or either high level skills or capabilities that are helping you in your professional career? And then also, how do you continue to motivate yourself for personal and professional goal pursuits and ascension? Does that all make sense? I know I gave you guys like a 3-part question, and a few of us are Marines here, and we don't count very well without crayons and such. So I'm gonna jump around. Sergey, I'll let you go first.
Thanks for that, Mike. Yeah, I was trying to do the mental math and got lost in the algebra, but I would say, so to start with motivation, I think a lot of it comes from my service as well. My story of getting into the Marine Corps was one where, kind of that sort of stereotypical Marine Corps recruiting commercial, somebody looking to find themselves, somebody looking to better themselves. And you know what, the Marine Corps delivered, and it really helped me improve myself by giving me the confidence in myself to know that I can do better, that I can continue to improve, that I can continue to excel. So I think a large part of my motivation really stems from that mindset that was given to me by the Marine Corps, or rather I should say that I earned through the Marine Corps, which is that you can improve, you can get better, that it's not a hopeless situation. And I think this is something that, the idea of learned helplessness, or the idea that you are just the way you are, or that whatever situation you're dealing with, there's no way out. I think that's a very difficult and challenging mindset to be in. And when you have that mindset, you don't have a lot of energy or will to apply yourself or to move forward, because why? You've already convinced yourself you can't, or that your efforts are not going to amount to anything. So I think the greatest motivator for me is to know that as long as I continue to apply myself, that as long as I continue to learn, as long as I continue to extend myself and accumulate as much skill as possible, I can take on any situation, and then the sky's the limit. Then it becomes, kind of interesting and curious even about what can I accomplish in this lifetime. So I'd say that's probably the biggest motivator for me. And with regards to, I got to be honest, I forgot the other question. Can you remind me?
Let's see, motivation, professional pursuits, but also something that you potentially struggled with during your service time that you eventually mastered and have now turned into a skill or a strength.
Yeah, I gotta really say that that's a phenomenal question. It's really made me think. I think communication has been something that I've always been challenged by. I'm not a very social person. I consider myself an introvert, and it has been difficult for most of my life to communicate to others, to even speak in public. And that's something that I struggled with at points in my military career. But, the Marine Corps doesn't care. If it needs you to lead, it needs you to lead. If it needs you to present in front of, foreign leadership and train them on tactics or deployment, then that's what you're doing. Your feelings don't matter. So there was a lot of that. And I think that push necessary, again, combined with that mindset that I was talking about earlier, has allowed me to develop a skill set that has been incredibly transferable to the civilian workplace, because as we all know, communication is king.
Awesome. Shuffle around. Demetrius.
Yeah, so I'll start where Sergey left off and maybe even take part of his answer. For me, like you said, communication is probably the biggest thing, and I still, of course, can always improve upon it. But as Sergey alluded to, you kind of get into the mindset when you are challenged with things that at the end of the day, you're going to go up the hill. And that's the kind of approach I take. Sometimes I'm nervous, sometimes but I'm going to go up the hill regardless. And that's just the mindset I kind of take to things or challenges that come about. And really, I try to apply that to the team. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't come across well, but the idea is that, hey, you have to have the courage to go up the hill regardless. And then as far as motivation, I think it goes back to both personal upbringing and training or things that were kind of instilled in the military, sense of duty. I use it as motivation just across the board to the same effect about, hey, your duty is to go up the hill. Your duty is to execute the mission, complete the task, you know, get our trainees trained, get them employed, take pride in that, take ownership of that, develop your team. So it all comes back to this is your duty. And then just personal upbringing, again, where my mom didn't call it duty. She just said, you know, part of being a man is being a man and doing these things. So, and you will do them. So it's kind of a no nonsense approach to motivation. So that's just kind of, it served me well and kept me on the straight and narrow. And I lean on that when it comes back to, you know, getting back down to my foundation.
Thank you, sir. Heather.
I'll answer backwards as well. Something I had to learn, and I learned fortunately very early, and I'd say it's something I'm always developing, was how to determine what's noise and what's important when working with people, working on multiple tasks, and understanding how to stay on track. And that is, you know, everybody has a different personality. If you are, you know, I was came in a second lieutenant. Everyone was over me, was above me, and everybody had a different task. And understanding priorities, what is noisy today and not important versus what is very important, and what's going to keep me in line and getting the job done versus what's going to distract me and not meet the mission. I learned that very early on, and how to work with people with very different personalities, because that includes a lot of noise too. That lesson served me very well. It's something I'm still, and will probably always be refining, but I think that was something that was challenging at first. And as I've learned that, has helped me not only become more successful, but be a more successful leader, to help my team keep the noise out and stay focused as well. And it's something to always work on. And then for motivation, I think there's two aspects of that for myself. Partially, naturally, I am always really excited and curious when there's something new or challenging to work through. So the military was great for that, because there's always something new or a change or a challenge. And the answer is you need to go figure that out, because like what was mentioned earlier, sometimes they just give you a half direction and you need to go figure it out. So I always have enjoyed that, kind of like the chaos. So that works for me and is motivating in the sense that I get to solve a puzzle. And that's for my professional and personal life. I really love new things. And on the other side of it, I take leadership as a big responsibility that should not be taken lightly. And so if I have a team, I have the privilege to lead, then much like Demetrius said, it's logical. I have to go up that hill. I have to take it responsibly. And that's motivating to me to ensure I mean, there are days I'll misstep, but to do my best every day to be a good leader, and to learn and to grow and to be there for my team. So those are the things that really motivate me.
Thank you, ma'am. Last but not least, Chris.
Yeah, so looking at things that motivate me, I have always, since being a kid and being, on a wrestling team or a baseball team, or it's a team sport, right? And you're thrown into a situation with a team, right? I was on a little league baseball team, and I'll never forget, they put me out at right field because I never played before. I did a whole season out there, and the one time I was too scared to even swing the goddamn bat. And this 12-year-old was pitching at me. I'm a little 10-year-old. That guy looked like a 30-year-old to me, right? I think he had a mustache, and he was throwing these fastballs, and I got walked onto first base. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. I dropped the bat and I jogged over to the base, and I was like, oh, I finally made it to the base. And I didn't know that this league I was in, you weren't allowed to lead off the base, but I'd watched pro baseball and guys take a step off the bag. Well, the umpire goes, hey, you stepped off the bag, you're out. And I was like crushed, and the coach is yelling at me. Everybody's yelling at me. It's the first time I even got on base, right? And I was scared of the ball and everything else. And that whole season, I rode the pine, right? And I'm getting somewhere with the story, trust me. And the next season, I said, you know what? I'm tired of this bull crap. I'm not having that happen again. So I went to baseball tryouts, and I looked around. There was a new coach. The old coach had been transferred. I was on a military base with military families, new people. It was a whole new thing. And I went up, and I remember my heart was pounding because I was about to lie to the coach. Well, I went up to the coach, and he looked at me and he said, all right, what position you play? And I looked him right in the eye and I said, pitcher. And he looked at me and he paused. He looked around, and I'm like, I'm having all these heart palpitations. And he looked around and he goes, we got a pitcher. So go over there to the pitcher's coach. And I ran over there, and that's how I became a pitcher in baseball, right? I wanted to be it. I wanted to do it, right? And that lesson as a little kid, it's the same in the military. You seek additional responsibility, and like Heather said, you seek those challenges out. So what motivates me are those challenges. And I love it being around a group of people, because once I'm in a group of people, I can figure out really quickly, like, what are the strengths that people have and how to best put those together to get this force multiplier effect, right? So that's it. And in terms of, to me, I typed my little story also into the Q&A, right? I can talk the legs off the table and the wings off a bat. So I'm not going to tell you another story of, things that I struggled with and had to get better at. But there's a whole bunch of them, right? And I'm still learning lessons today. The thing is, you can also got to look at yourself and go, hey, you're not perfect. You can still get better no matter where you are. And I take a very humble approach to being a leader. I look at the servant leader model. And so I'll just leave my answer in the chat there. But I think, taking that risk and going for it is what you have to do. And fortunately, my parents put me into sports where I learned a lesson.
That's great. So were you any good as a pitcher? Oh, you don't have to answer that. I think we all know that answer.
I beaned the first girl that was in our little league, and I didn't mean to do it. And her dad yelled at me. Actually, she closed her eyes. She was like me, and then I was the guy pitching. And I hit her hand. I hit the bat. Her hands were on the bat. She closed her eyes, and the ball hit her hand. And her dad almost came out on the pitcher's mound to kill me, but the coaches stopped him. But yeah, I was okay.
Awesome. Good copy. So I'm going to jump a little bit to a different question, because we were just talking about motivation for personal and professional pursuits. And then we talked a little bit about strength development on some things that we maybe originally struggled with. I'm going to spin this next question here. So how do you motivate other people, particularly in a civilian workplace, where maybe some of the techniques that work for us in the military are not applicable? I think we've all experienced this out in our civilian life. Really quick story. A bunch of my friends and I, about 5 of us jarheads, ended up working for the same company, and we all worked on the same contract, supporting the same customer. And we had a little saying, it's not show friends, it's show business. And that was kind of our little in-house rule to one another, saying, hey, I'm ready to come and give you some bad news, but I need you to suck it up and listen to what I'm saying, because I care about you. But that particular relationship, that level of rapport, is not always achievable or attainable in the workplace. So how do we get to brass tacks, if you will, with some of the folks that may not have the same experience as us. So I'll be really interested to hear these answers. Let's see, we're gonna go Demetrius first. Let's go with the handicap.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to motivation, you can try to relate it back. I'm gonna use a military term, I can't help it. Relate it back to mission. I'm really motivated by mission and what we do. But I also think you need to take advantage or use team members' special talents and let them know that you recognize those special talents and then use them in execution of the mission. I think a lot of times people are motivated if they know that, hey, I'm a contributor to the team and to the mission based on what I do well. So I try to utilize that. And this may be a little bit off topic, but it kind of relates. I also like to look for, when it comes to talent, people who do things that I don't do well and let them know that, hey, I don't do this well. So I'm depending on you to fill that gap. So sometimes people are motivated by a sense of responsibility to the team based on what they do well.
Awesome. Sergey.
Great question. I think I would, I definitely agree with Demetrius. I also had a moment where I was just thinking about something that a leader when I was in the Marine Corps shared with me when I was going up the ranks. I became an NCO, I became a corporal, and we were doing a training exercise. And there were some Marines that were kind of not meeting the standard. And I was seeking his counsel as far as how to motivate them, how to improve their performance. And I'll never forget the words he told me. And this is a Marine that has deployed to combat zones before. And this was at a time where we were kind of ramping up for possibly another deployment to Afghanistan. And he said, "Let no man's ghost say he was untrained." And those words really stuck with me, in that the idea behind it is, before you assume a person failed because of circumstance or because of their own lack of drive, make sure that you did everything in your power to ensure their training was up to standard, to ensure that they had the resources, the skills, the equipment, whatever they needed to succeed at their mission. And before you make any assumption about where they might have failed, check in with yourself first and hold yourself accountable for either your successes or failures in fostering their success. So that always stuck with me. And I think that's the one mindset that has really helped me succeed in my civilian pursuits, in that I try to avoid jumping to an assumption that somebody's not doing something because of, lack of motivation, or because they're not a good person, or because of, whatever the common assumptions often are. And I try to instead focus on the processes and where my role in relation to them lies, as far as making sure that they're able to be successful. So that has helped me a lot. And I think one of the challenges on the flip side, coming from the military, that I've had to and continue to try to figure out, is that in the military, it's you're able to be much more direct with people. And in the civilian place, sometimes that's not as appreciated. So that's definitely something that I've been managing. But I think it all comes down to, as Demetrius was saying, understanding your team, understanding where they're coming from, what their role is as it relates to the mission, and then just figuring out a way to connect everybody to that mission mindset, to focus on what we collectively as a whole are trying to accomplish.
All right, let's go, Chris.
Yeah, I really don't have too much to add to what my colleagues have said. Leading people in the civilian sector is way different. The Marines especially have an in-your-face mentality. And I think about my basic training. I will never forget my drill instructor. I mean, I was scared of that guy for the freaking 6 weeks that, that guy was in my life. He was a Vietnam veteran, but man, he trained us hard so that, when we got out into the Fleet Marine Force, we were ready for it, right? The civilian sector is a little bit a different business. And I had to kind of change my language. Part of my transition struggle, and we'll probably get to that, was like, I had 26 years of this in my mindset, right? So coming in and telling people what to do and how to get it done, I had to back off and use a bit of a softer approach sometimes. And again, that goes into knowing people, understanding what people respond to what. And when I came in and tried my same technique that had worked for 26 years in uniform, it didn't work so well, right? So I had to learn some lessons about that. And I think it goes back to knowing your people. That's a great leadership lesson. Who are your people? And sometimes people have various levels of performance. How do you motivate to get them to do the best? Not so that you can get the best out of them, so that they can get the best out of themselves. Because ultimately, I believe people want that.
Great answer, Chris. Heather, you got your work cut out for you.
I do. I feel like so much was covered. Part of what I believe you asked was, how do we motivate others, particularly veterans, in helping, differences in the civilian workforce. That is a big part of my job, particularly with our students. So I'll talk a little bit more to that, and helping them understand what works and what doesn't work, taking skills from your time in the military to the civilian workforce, and how do we keep everyone motivated there. Everyone's already covered getting your hands dirty, getting in elbow deep with your team, and making sure you're part of the job with them. It's very demotivating when your boss, your leader, doesn't want to do the work. So making sure you're willing to be there, I think, is one of the most important things. But one thing I found really important is very open communication. Communication styles are very different, as Sergey mentioned, military to civilian, but regardless, transparency is key. As transparent as you can be, and having a really honest conversation of, hey, this isn't working. You can't speak this way to people. And we have that conversation often. Or you can't send this email like this because you sound incredibly rude. But here's why, because I understand you don't understand. So let's do a bit of training, because what was also mentioned was, if someone's not trained, how can you expect them to know? So one of the key things we do to help people be motivated versus just beat down because they're told you're wrong again, is let's look at what went wrong, do some training, and try it again with us right there with you. Building people up to understand this is simply a new job, a new phase in life as you're transitioning, or as you're new on my team. Here's how we communicate. Here's how we operate. It's not, it's the same thing you were doing. You're still on a team. You're still relying on others. We're just operating slightly different. So that's something we do. We do it openly and honestly. Chris mentioned earlier, we do a lot with love. I think if you're on our teams, I hope you would feel that love, because none of it is ever meant to be a hammer. It is meant to be there to build each other up. And I think that's one of the most important things we do, is we motivate through love. Sometimes that's holding someone accountable. And that can feel challenging, but it's still there to build someone up. And I think most importantly, particularly when dealing with our fellow veterans, and in general with our team, is we leave room for grace. No one's perfect. We leave that room to grow as a person and as a professional. And that, I feel, is motivating. It's been done for me when I've made mistakes, and that, instead of making me want to leave right away, allowing room to trip a little bit and then grow and learn, has been very motivating. So I try to do the same. I hope that answered your question. Everybody else really grabbed in there.
No, you just gave me something. I like to take quotes from engagements, and I have like a app on my phone that I use notes, and I just call it dimes. And you just gave me a new dime. Leave room for grace. I really like that. I'm going to write that on the whiteboard. Leave room for grace. That was a really great conversation. I'll share one really quick thing. I learned a lot in my time in the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps is a very we're kind of like a cult, right? In a good way, though. Not like a Waco, Texas, drink the Kool-Aid cult, but like a follow me to greatness cult. You get it if you get it. But we are very strength trait related focus, honor, courage, commitment, discipline, dedication, fortitude, integrity, character. And these are all amazing things that help transform me as a young man, as a teenager, and to a responsible citizen. But in my post-Marine Corps life and career, I have found what I consider an infinite resource, and that is empathy. And it is, as you all spoke, this ability, it's kind of like, I play it kind of like a game. It's like an intelligence collection game. I am actively collecting intelligence on all of my employees in order to get to know who they are at the best level possible. So then I can properly understand what their needs and wants are as people, and then spin that to what their needs are as professionals. I beg, barter, and cut deals with them. And the idea is you 100% dedicate yourself to the team. I will dedicate myself to your professional and personal endeavors to make sure you get to where you want to be for the 1, 2, 5, 7 years that you intend to be here. So I think I heard a little bit of that from everybody, but wanted to kind of highlight that is if you have people around you, get to know them. If you have people that are reports to you, get to know them, figure out what makes them tick, figure out who they are, what are they interested in. And unfortunately, I'm going to use the word use, manipulate, leverage, call it what you want, but use that to your benefit to make sure they feel what they are supposed to feel as employees or as individuals that are working with you. Empathy, an untapped resource that has unlimited value. I'm going to combine, I think we're getting close to time here because we want to leave it open for questions. I'm going to combine this last question into kind of 2 parts. And initially it's going to be, what advice would you give employers who are considering hiring veterans and how they best leverage the unique skill set that we present as veterans? I think Chris talked about that a little bit. And then also, second part of this question is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see? So let's do this. I'm going to flip it. Part 1 of the question is, in your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges that veterans face when transitioning to civilian employment? And then the second part of the question is going to be, what advice would you give employers who are pursuing or considering increasing their veteran population within a corporation? Chris, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. Biggest challenges. Number 1, you're on a timeline. And everybody says, hey, get ready to get out of the service, 2 years in advance, you should be going to classes and start thinking about that's number 1 is time. Number 2 is figuring out what the hell you want to do. A few people have it, but there's a stat. It's been the same statistic for like the last 10 years. 80% of people leave the military and are not quite sure where they're going, what they're doing. There are some who are going, hey, I got the GI Bill, I'm going to school. All they're doing is delaying it for a while, right? And then when they get to the end of school, my son's a senior right now in college, and he was in the Marines, and now he's like, oh, what am I going to do? He's going through, he just delayed his stressors till after college. So the clock is ticking because you have a paycheck in the military. Somebody pays your electric bill if you're living in the barracks. You go to the chow hall. Like, some people have never even cooked themselves their own meal since they left their mom's house, right? And now you're supposed to take care of yourself, and it's a wake-up call, right? So the clock is ticking, and a lot of people feel desperate and they're like, oh, I gotta take the security job at the mall because I got nothing else. I'm gonna be a guard in a parking lot, right? And we see that with a lot of people that come to NPower. Man, I don't want to work at Panda Express for minimum wage. I don't want to work at this thing. So the time is there, and that's the big challenge. And then you're also, it's like somebody who breaks their ankle playing pro football. And, 1 minute you're in the 49ers locker room and people are telling you great interception, good job. And the next minute you're walking into 7-Eleven. Nobody even knows who you are, cares who you are. You used to be on the 49ers 2 years ago. So what? And you have depression, or you have the ability to be sad because all your best friends are still in the locker room and telling each other how great they did in the game. And you're outside, you're on your isolation. So there's isolation and all these things. Those are the challenges, right? And so how do you mitigate those and prepare for them? The other thing, advice to employers, military people make amazing doggone employees. Most of them have some kind of a mission focus. And I'm not saying that every military person or every veteran is a great employee. Okay. They're not. There's some of us that might, doing it. But overall, if you've had a secret clearance or a top secret clearance for a while, that requires a credit background check. That requires you can't have a DUI or any of these other things. There's a level of certain accomplishment. If you're a sergeant in the Marine Corps, in the Army, or a chief petty officer in the Navy, you've been promoted above your peer group, right? Somebody has already seen you have the skills and the raw capability, and it's competitive. It is really competitive. So my advice to an employer: if you don't have an employee resource group, have one. If you're too small, get your military trusted agent to look at those resumes and tell you what's really going on. because even your HR, your recruiting people might not be conversant in all that. And if you're thinking about, take a look, where'd they come from? And another veteran can probably decipher some of that, and I'll leave it there.
Excellent. Let's go, Heather.
The biggest challenges, I would say 3 things, for veterans coming out, not realizing the options that they have. It's a lot of career paths you can take. And then when you start looking into it, it's challenging to understand what that might even look like in your day to day. So it's very easy to just gravitate towards words, so operations, and going and being an operations manager and realizing that is not the same as being in your battalion, brigade, S3, doing plans and operations for military operations. Very different. Or everybody tells you to go get your PMP and doing project management. It's going to be very different. So it's challenging to understand what your options are and what that means. The responsibility on the veteran there, though, is to get out of your military bubble early and start talking to people, knowing people, having friends who aren't in the military to understand what life is outside of the military. The second one is there's a big gap between the military and the civilian world, and there's a lot of good articles on that. The understanding is not there between the two, and there's a bit of a responsibility on the civilian workforce and just civilian populace in general to start narrowing that a bit and reading. You can Google it. You can talk to your veteran friends, military service members, past the thank you for your service, and just have a conversation and start understanding what's going on. And I think that's on the responsibility of both parties to start intermingling a bit. And then there's culture shock. As we've mentioned a few times, how we talk is different. How we act is different. We have different rules. What might be appropriate in one place in both directions is not appropriate in the other. So that is challenging and can take time to adjust to. But while you're taking that time to adjust, you're also in a 90-day probationary period. And you might get there and be feeling like you just don't like it. So I think those are challenges, and it might feel like you are just not going to fit anywhere the same way you fit in the military again. So having people to lean on and talk through that with and finding a good mentor is really important. For the employers, I think they can do a few things when hiring. One, if they receive a resume and clearly it's for a veteran and they aren't positive what that veteran did, if their MOS, if their job didn't make sense, ask somebody, what's a 68 whiskey? What's a combat veteran? What does that, or a combat medic? What did that include? Can you explain it to me so they can pull out the transferable skills and understand what they're looking for when they talk to them, pass the resume, have an open dialogue with their friends so they know, but then also go into that interview knowing what transferable skills do I want from this person so they know what kind of questions to ask and what stories to look for. And then also know what they don't want. So that way they can say, like, this person is not a good fit for the team, or this person is a fantastic fit for the team. Because at the end of the day, it's about who fits in your team, who's going to be a force multiplier. The veteran's going to learn the job. They've learned 20 jobs in their time in the military because we have our primary job and our additional duties. Make sure they're a good fit for the team. And that's what you need to know as a hiring manager. They'll learn the job. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Let's go, Demetrius.
Oh man, I didn't know. I was trying to mark out stuff that was already had been said, so everything's been kind of marked out. But it kind of goes back to, for vets, have a plan. I think Chris and Heather both touched on that. And for the employers, make sure you have some kind of way to understand vets coming in. And once they're there, I would say definitely, connect them to the mission and take advantage of their unique talents and use it as a force multiplier within the organization. So I'll just keep it short and simple.
There's their word again, force multiplier. I'll say it again, force multiplier, force multiplier. Sergey.
Thanks. I'll try to be brief. I just want to highlight the incredible answers my colleagues gave and fully agree. In particular with Chris, who did a A10 strafing run of truth. If you know, you know. But what he talked about was essentially my story. I got out of the military. I ended up working as a security guard, working, standing by a door, greeting people, even though I was a squad leader in a war zone. And it was talking about the transition, I'd say I could sum it up briefly in 3 points. Number one is that adjustment, that social and cultural adjustment. You go from an environment where you work with people who are willing to sacrifice their life for you, in a culture where everything matters, the smallest detail matters. 2, in the civilian workplace where relationships aren't as intense or as loyal oftentimes. And there's no real imperative for things being a certain way. Oftentimes, if you try to make things a certain way, you'll be the bad guy. So it's definitely a real big adjustment culturally. And that adjustment is not only difficult emotionally for personal reasons, but also difficult because it can give the impression of diminishing the value of a person's service, which is a very difficult thing. So to tie into how veterans can improve their transition, it's knowing your value, understanding what you can bring to the workplace and what kind of strengths you have, and then being able to communicate it. And that's the biggest skill that veterans need to develop, is knowing how to communicate what they can do, knowing how to understand and adjust to the environment that they're entering, and be able to have those strong communication skills. And to wrap it up, what employers could do better is really just take a chance on giving more responsibility to veterans to showcase what they're capable of. And I think there's a lot of organizations that are starting to do that and have really benefited as a result.
And thank you so much, Sergey. I think we are close to time. I'm going to pass it back to Kelly here in a second. I think you guys and gal are all amazing people, amazing Americans, and true human life force multipliers. Force multiplier, use that word again. Thank you for sharing your post-traumatic strength with everyone. I want to leave really quick with a quote. There's a guy named Joe Rogan. He's a little interesting guy, but he's got an amazing quote that I have in a poster in my office. And the quote reads, "I've been a bad worker in the past. I know the feeling of failure, the feeling of shame. I was a weak, lazy person and I didn't respect myself. To that, I say, be the hero in your own movie. Pretend that your life was a movie and it started now. What would the hero do? What would the person that you respect do? What would the person that you admire and inspires you do? And then go do that." Joe Rogan. Thanks a lot, Kelly. Thank you, everybody. Go be force multipliers and make sure you're employing your post-traumatic strength. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Just wanted to see if we can cover a couple of the questions that came up in the chat. So I'm going to just see if one of you can jump in with a response here. As a leader of a mixed team, how do you manage a team to challenge them, but not to push to the feeling of burnout? Anyone want to take
As an executive
What is
director, I can
burnout?
talk to that, and probably Demetrius too. The main thing is being in touch with your people, right? You've got to have ways to get down. And it's the same thing as a company commander, battalion commander. I wanted to be at the Lance Corporal level. I wanted to go see what was going on down there, right? How tired were people? What was the stressor, right? So I know that my recruiters have a really, really hard job. I know my placement teams have a really, really hard job. And I know, right? And so I've got to balance this. And then I've got to communicate with my higher headquarters, right? And I need to make sure that the policies are in place so that they're realistic. And I think nothing beats being able to go down and also reward people as you can. What's my toolbox for rewarding people? Whether that's a monetary gift, whether it's some time off, whether it's sending somebody to a baseball game that we got tickets to or something like that. Figure out creative ways to take care of your people and just let them know they're appreciated. And the other thing that I learned in the military was sometimes we have surge ops. We need to surge. We have to work weekends and we have to crunch through for the mission. But I'm going to give you time off on the back end. I'm going to figure out how to work that out, right? And I feel like my staff trusts me. They know that if I come down and say I need this, then I need it. So that I don't do it every week. I don't do it every month. But when it comes surge time, I reserve that and the staff responds accordingly. But then I got to follow through with that. I'll just leave it.
Great response. We are basically out of time. This has been a really engaging hour, and I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today as we celebrate and honor Military Appreciation Month. Special thank you to Mike for moderating, and Heather, Chris, Demetrius, and Serge for sharing your experience and expertise with us. For any of you that have joined us, if you are interested in learning how you can add veterans to your team and be able to leverage their post-traumatic strength, please reach out to us at volunteering@enpower.org. I put that in the chat, and we will get you connected to the placement team here. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
All right, thanks, everyone.